I don't know if anyone's following the news tonight. Newt Gingrich won Georgia. So feel that as you may. This sort of revisits an ongoing theme that I have, which is that I don't understand the way that other people's brains work. And it's depressing at times. And when I went home for Thanksgiving, I realized that I don't even understand how my own family's brains work. And how am I going to change the world if I can't even change my own family's behavior? And this is sort of me and a lot of them. And then something amazing happened. In 2005, my mother bought a Prius. This isn't it. This is a better picture. And I sort of wondered what was behind that. What was her motivation for buying a Prius? One was she saw it as a way to earn more love from her oldest son, which is me, because she knew I was into the environment. The other is that plainly she felt guilty, which is also why many of us, I think, sort of shudder from the idea of bringing home paper bags from Whole Foods. And so there's some good motivations that we can learn to tap into. My father is a much harder case. He was dead against anything sort of environmental. And sort of really resisted the idea, and then eventually one day changed all the windows in his house and all of the insulation in his attic, did a whole energy retrofit, more than I can ever imagine. And the reason was because of George Bush. George Bush was the most influential influence in my family. He brought us together like nobody else had before, together because we finally had something we all agreed in. And so that was like a real driver. And I realized my father was like the father in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which is that he just needed to come to it himself. We needed to trick him into thinking that this was his idea. And then it was a great thing to do, and he sort of proceeded with it with great vigor. And it reminds us that if you want to get people to do things, the number one thing, or one of the things you could do, is to remove the reinforcers, the things that sort of convince people to keep doing the same things that they have been doing. There are lots of versions of this. This is a liberal version of Fox News in the morning, which is essentially a CO2 monitor in their house, which every time they walk by it says, keep being liberal. There are other mechanisms that are at play there. We have one of our colleagues who's an energy modeler who wanted his mother to stop using styrofoam. So we actually presented a business case to her. The business case works with some people, but most of us aren't that rational. Another colleague of ours is Seema in the middle, and her father's a petroleum engineer via Saudi Arabia and Houston, and he was not going to budge. And so she very cleverly realized that her mother could be a Trojan horse for sustainability into their family, convinced her to start composting, and lo and behold, her mother brought it up, and her father had one of two options: either get on board and enjoy the love of his family, or choose that fight, and he did obviously the former. Jenny's father is a sort of a do-it-yourselfer. He's a curmudgeon. He doesn't need people to essentially tell him what the greatest trends are. And if you have a curmudgeon on your hands who wears the same jeans that they've been wearing for the last 20 years, no offense, sir, then that's just not a battle that you want to pick. Let him be, right? Other colleagues of ours, who is this? Oh yeah, Brittany, who's in the audience, can raise her hand. Her father is in Limousine Today all the time because he's a limousine manufacturer, and he calls what she does that green Sorry. But then he realized that there was a trend in the 2000s and the early aughts around electric vehicles, and just saw that there was an opportunity there and embraced it on his own. Again, like the sort of father from My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and now he's still in Limousine Today every time it releases for different things. So as liberals, someone pointed out to us that we're confused. You go into Whole Foods, and there's like a zillion different labels, and if you go into King Soopers, the label is simply, it's cheaper here. And so it'd be better if we sort of were able to sort of come up with a more simple, unified message. Although when people say it's greener, I want to strangle them. It's better to sort of tap into people's identity. If you're a hipster and you can convince someone to ride a bike, that's great. But if you can convince somebody who's not a hipster to embrace their identity and do what we're talking about, that's great too. So for example, if you're a Boulder mom, or if you're a parent, then obviously the thing to play to is their identity around fear and their crazy obsession with their child, if you can find a way to do that. So with that, what's next? Oh yes. The thing to avoid is that making us feel like we are on our own in the world. That if we feel like we are isolated, then nothing will happen. But if we realize that we are part of like a collective, then, how? And ultimately, what we need to remember is that we have two choices. We can either sort of be doers, and lastly, who speaks for the snowmen? Thank you.